My name is Arthur Vance, a 70-year-old retired carpenter, and I realized a terrifying truth the day my home stopped feeling like a sanctuary. My wife passed away 5 years ago, leaving me with a house full of 40 years of memories, hand-built furniture and deep quiet. I thought my son, Kenneth, understood how sacred this place was to me, but his new wife had completely different plans for my life. Before I continue this story, I would love to know where you are watching from today, what the weather is like in your part of the world, and please take a quick second to subscribe to the channel for more stories. Watching my daughter-in-law, Chloe, walk through my dining room was like watching a land surveyor appraise a property she already owned. She ran her fingers across the mahogany table I built with my own hands and casually announced that my house would be perfect for her aging mother, Brenda. She talked about shifting me down into the basement apartment while Kenneth sat across from us, staring silently at his plate without defending my right to my own home. The sheer nerve of her planning my future without asking made my chest tighten, but I kept my composure and set my coffee cup down with a firm click. When I told her a clear and absolute no, the entire room went completely silent. Chloe tried to brush it off as a misunderstanding, claiming they were only trying to help me manage a house that was far too large for one aging man. But I made it very clear that nobody assigns rooms in a home they do not own. They thought my refusal was just an initial emotional reaction that would fade away with time, but they severely underestimated my resolve. A few days later, I came home to find Chloe casually dropping off stacked cardboard boxes full of Brenda belongings right inside my hallway. She smiled as if my boundaries were merely suggestions, completely ignoring the fact that I had already rejected her absurd relocation scheme. The boundary lines were drawn, but Chloe pushed even harder by using an old emergency key Kenneth had given her years ago. I walked into my hallway on a Tuesday morning and caught her preparing to clear out my basement for Brenda craft equipment. That was the absolute last straw for me, so I demanded the key back immediately and had every single lock on my doors replaced by a locksmith before the afternoon was over. Money was the next weapon they tried to use against me, expecting me to hand over financial support without question. For years, I had been sending monthly checks to help Kenneth with my 2 precious grandchildren, but I realized that money was being absorbed into their household control dynamics. I immediately redirected those funds into secure, locked trust accounts for the kids that no adult could touch until they turn 18, which sent Chloe into a furious rage over the phone. Kenneth came to see me alone a few days later, looking exhausted, broken, and weighed down by the conflict brewing in his marriage. He admitted that Chloe had already promised her mother she could live in my house without ever consulting me first. I looked my son in the eye and explained that avoiding arguments with his wife was costing him his self-respect, and that using my grandchildren as leverage would never force me to surrender my dignity or my home. The emotional manipulation reached its peak when Brenda herself showed up at my fence, looking lost and deeply apologetic. It turned out Chloe had convinced her own mother to sell her apartment under the false promise that I had happily invited her to move in with me. I felt terrible for Brenda, so instead of holding a grudge, I sat down with her over tea and helped her find an open room in a wonderful local senior living community. The final confrontation happened when Chloe and Kenneth marched into my living room with a folder full of legal documents. Chloe arrogantly explained that transferring the house title to Kenneth now would save on future taxes, provided I agreed to live out the rest of my days in the basement. I looked at the legal papers, looked at my silent son, and delivered an ultimatum that permanently shattered Chloe's grand ambitions for my property. I made it unmistakably clear that my house would only pass to Kenneth after my death, and if anyone tried to force me out early, I would alter my will immediately to donate the entire estate to a charity for widowed seniors. That was the moment Brenda stood up, confronted her daughter for lying to everyone, and walked out. The illusion of control Chloe held over the family completely collapsed right there in my living room. In the months that followed, the consequences of that toxic greed tore Kenneth's marriage apart, leading to their eventual separation. Kenneth rented his own apartment, reconnected with me, and finally apologized for failing to stand up for his father. Brenda thrived in her new community. My grandchildren visited every weekend to play in the yard, and peace finally returned to the home Daniel and I built together. True strength is not about shouting or demanding control over others, but about standing firm when people try to strip away your dignity. Protecting your boundaries might create temporary conflict, but it ultimately preserves the truth of who you are. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. And if you enjoyed this narration, please click on the video showing on your end screen right now for more powerful life stories just like this one.